Thousands of casual workers across the country would be given the right to a permanent position, receiving paid sick leave, annual leave and job security after just 6 months under new changes put forward by the federal government. Business groups are hitting back though, claiming higher take-home pay and flexibility will be put at risk, which could be a disincentive for workers. For more, we are joined by human resources expert Jonathon Woolfrey. Welcome to the program, Jonathon.
Pleasure to be with you, Monica.
More than 850,000 casual employees across the country would be eligible for this pathway to permanency. What does it actually mean for them?
What it's going to mean for casual workers, and as you've mentioned, there's a significant amount of them, they'll be able to put in a request to their employer after a mere 6 months of employment on regular patterns of work to be able to be made permanent. And the obligations on employers are going to be quite significant. They can't just claim generic business reasons for that. So there'll be an obligation on employers to follow through on those requests where appropriate.
Now, plenty of businesses are asking the question, why fix something if it isn't broken? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think at the end of the day, legislation aside, secure work is good for employers and employees for a whole range of reasons, both attraction, retention and a range of things like that. But what we probably find is such a big workforce, is such a big number of casuals, the federal government are trying to fix up some of the marginal areas where people are disaffected. Women make up a significant amount of casual workers, young people and things like that. And the current federal government feel, in their view, that there are not enough protections for those at the margins who probably are being disadvantaged.
It would also mean that casuals would lose their pay loading and have less take-home pay. What are the wider implications that need to be considered here? Yeah,
look, I think in principle, and business groups and employers that I speak to already since Minister Burke announced it, in principle people agree with this. But again, there are some unintended consequences that could come through this. As you've mentioned, take-home pay, arguably when you get benefits, leave, etc. and things like that, the 25% loading that most people experience as casual workers disappears. And whilst it's meant to be in favour of the employee as to whether or not they accept it or not, we know that there's going to be a lot of unintended consequences, if not thought through carefully, that'll actually limit the number of pay for and impact workers negatively.
And we have a number of viewer comments on this. Daniel Stokel asks, so they become part-time and the wage drops?
Yep, quite frankly, they get benefits from that, as you've mentioned in there. But yeah, generally part-time workers get 25% less cash in hand for that arrangement. Andy
McGarry writes, lots of jobs about to be lost.
Look, it really depends on the construction of the legislation, and there's a bit to go. But, anything that impacts employers' ability to create jobs, to take those risks that makes them uncertain at the margins, particularly in such a big group, will possibly limit employers creating those jobs and taking those risks.
Tony Hodgett says, another blow to small business. Will this just add more pressure to already struggling small businesses?
Look, there's definitely a lot of pressure on small business. Ever since the announcement on Monday from Tony Burke, he's clarified that small businesses will be exempt. That's 15 or 20 people subject to the legislation, but small medium businesses above that size. So there is some protection for small business. That's been agreed. But yeah, small medium businesses above the size of 15 to 20 people, depending on the legislation. Look, not all of those do it easy and do it tough. So there will be some implications, but I'd like to focus on the positives as well.
Jenny Veenstra writes, we all know what employers will do before this happens, cut their hours so they aren't working full-time and then don't qualify.
Yep, this is the unintended consequences that I alluded to. Look, there will be strong protections in there to stop unscrupulous behaviour from employers. They'll anticipate a little bit of this and they'll consult industry, etc., so that they can try and stop bad actors in this space. But in such a big area, there is a real risk that people will be taken advantage of, or employers will make decisions preemptively to this legislation that might disaffect employees, that's for sure.
Jasmine Bishop asks, does this mean that part-timers get the casual pay rate too?
No, it doesn't, not technically, but employers will actually be looking at part-timers, casuals, trying to attract a workforce, and they may have to reconsider what they pay part-timers versus casuals, but there's no entitlement for part-timers.
Alexander Love says casuals are employed as casuals with a higher pay rate and to work around their other schedules with more flexibility. University and high school students, they choose casual work for a reason, don't they? I mean, do they really want this?
Well, university and students, yeah, absolutely. I think they do that in a flexible way. Just briefly, graduates and things like that take 2.6 years of casual employment before they find a permanent role. And often young people in that situation actually want permanent employment, but they can't access it for a couple of years based on the research.
Well, Patricia Camantina says that this is why workers are called casuals. And on that comment, we'll leave it there. Jonathon Woolfrey, thank you very much for being with us.
My pleasure.